Today on the Topping Show, Tucker Carlson criticizes Fox News in a leaked video. Bud Light sellers refuse to reorder. Yuengling beer goes viral. Even Costco can't sell Bud Light. The government is unaware where EV components come from. Ford is saved by gasoline engines. Hollywood writers go on strike. Toyota stays the stiff shift. And Tuesday morning goes bankrupt, this time for good. All of that and much, much more on the Topping Show. Thank you for tuning in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. If you're a business owner or an IT leader, use a little assistance, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Gotta say, I see their owner at least twice a day. I have to say, he's quite handsome and brilliant. That's the joke. It's me. Nevertheless, if you need a little assistance, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Now, going into the business part of the podcast, you had Ford announce their Q1 results. And for the EV part, they were lackluster to say the least. The EV part of the company, that lost them about $700 million, I believe one of the reports were saying. And actually $722 million to be specific. Now, that was for EVs. Now, thankfully, one of the most profitable things and perhaps most successful things in terms of the company's history is the F-150 pickup truck. Not the Lightning, which is going viral, or Lightning. There's sure this type of metaphor you go with, but there's a lot of folks that are having the Ford Lightning, the EV truck, run out of steam or electricity on the highways. And there's a really viral video of someone that has a gas generator in the bed of the truck, and that's turned on and has an extension cord going from there. And then, of course, it has a plug, and it's plugging itself back in, so it's trying to charge itself to try to remediate that situation when it goes kaput. Now, thankfully, Ford Blue is the internal combustion engine, the traditional part of the company. That was the only reason they astonished Wall Street. Now, their Q1 overall sales were $41.5 billion, which is especially good because it was about 20% increase going from Q1 in 2022. And even better for Ford, Wall Street only estimated they're going to hit $36.1 billion in revenue Q1. And if you're publicly traded, one of the most important things you need to do is constantly knock the stocks off of Wall Street, since their vote of confidence is why many people buy their stock, those recommendations, all those sites, all those analysts. And to go above and beyond always signals good things for the company. Now, this is also in light of the Mustang E-Mach, the bastardized cousin of the Mustang. It's not a real Mustang. It's the EV SUV hybrid, or not hybrid, EV crossover. It's kind of like an SUV, kind of like car amalgameshed, crushed into one. But they had a price cut of that model by about $4,000. And this is in light of demand dropping 20% Q1. Now, Ford only sold about 12,000 EVs Q1. This is partially because they had to shut down the production line for the F-150 Lightning because of the explosive batteries, or electric or super lightning batteries. Again, it's a bug, not a feature, but they had to shut down production for multiple weeks for that one particular model. And of those 12,000 EVs they sold Q1, they claim they lost $58,333 for each one. Now, of course, there's a huge investment when it comes to the infrastructure to put those vehicles together in terms of not only the research and development, but you have the physical assembly of the product. So that's a huge upfront investment to put all those facilities together. They are claiming they're going to make billions of dollars in profit by Q4 when it comes to the EV model and the EV branch division of the company. However, right now, the only reason they are afloat and the only reason they're doing exceptionally well physically, as they physically push more units off the lot and sell them, is because of the internal combustion engine. So time will tell how long it will truly take for the EVs to become profitable, and then what kind of volume it will take of units for them to start competing with the Teslas of the world. Now, other interesting business news, you have Hollywood. The strikers, or rather the writers, have gone on strike. This specific union is called the Writers Guild, which sounds a lot fancier than it is just because it has the word guild in it. Granted, they're writers. They want to sound particularly suave, however you want to call themselves. Now, they claim it's their first strike in 15 years, and it's because of the breakdown in negotiation between the traditional Hollywood studios as well as the streaming platforms. And because most comedy is so unoriginal and bland these days when it comes to traditional media, they noted that Jimmy Kimmel was hit the hardest when it comes to having a lack of writing staff, which is not surprising since I would say probably the most complicated or intricate writing he could do would perhaps be his signature. Anything equivalent or above that is above his repertoire or an intellect, I would say. He's mostly known for being a virtue signaling Hollywood elitist who is famously anti-gun, of course, but it is especially ironic when most of Hollywood has private armed security with arms to rival the nation state, but they just don't want you to have that ability to defend yourselves. Nevertheless, he's known for using that method of attacking the Second Amendment, also using emotional rhetoric to say, if you don't agree with me, you want the kids to die, which is a morally vacuous position to take, to say the least, illogical, and of course, it's the ultimate bullying tactic. If you don't agree with me, you're heartless, which hopefully enough Americans are waking up to that fact that it's just a completely useless argument, and that just because you have a different methodology of how you think to get a superior result doesn't mean you don't care, although that's a cliche argument they make 100 times a week. Now, of course, you also have comedian, quote-unquote, Jimmy Fallon falling flat on his face with his lack of writers as well. It's no surprise they do very few original content themselves, and most of them are just a copy-paste. It seems to be about the same personality, the same mediocre jokes. But who knows? Maybe people will wake up and stop watching them. Time shall tell. Now, good business news, perhaps the best of the year, some might say. One of the best automotive companies in history, Toyota, is keeping the stick shift alive as intended. Now, this is especially fascinating because back in the day, every truck was a stick shift. It's also an affordable vehicle. Times have surely changed. Ironically enough, it used to be designed as a farm equipment. They were cheaper than cars when they first debuted to the mass public market. Now you have trucks going for 40, 50, 60, 100, 110 plus $1,000. And of course, they're all slow, automatic, and usually more luxury than function, most would say. Now, Toyota, combating that trend, they're going to keep the stick shift alive via the Toyota Tacoma. So they did a little sneak peek for their new model, or the rather upgraded model, or refresh. And they had a nice picture that had all three pedals. For the folks in the audience who have never driven a stick shift, I implore you, it is one of the best experiences you could have in your life. The third pedal is key to success in life, some might say. But it's especially contrast because it's the only truck in North America that has a stick shift now. Everyone else has acquiesced to the boring, rudimentary automatic transmission, which is as lackluster and unexciting as driving a Prius on a track. So I'm sure you could, but come on. I mean, actually, no, you couldn't because most tracks have fire control that can't handle lithium batteries. Perhaps not the most realistic analogy, but nevertheless, you get my point. Now, some are arguing, there's a very hot debate in the automotive community, if the Jeep Gladiator technically qualifies as a truck, in which case you would have two vehicles in North America they could still buy with a stick shift for trucks. It's a long debate, to which I say, no, it's not a truck. It's a Jeep. It's a Gladiator. It's a Jeep that has a little baby bed of a pickup. You can't tow worth a damn if you talk to most automotive experts or people that can read the brochure. And it's not large enough. It's basically a bastardized Jeep, which aesthetically it does look cool, and as long as you care more about looks over function and you don't need a truck, it's a fun vehicle to have, some might say. But nevertheless, I contend that there's one truck now being made on the market. It's a Toyota Tacoma with a stick shift. Now, unfortunately, I don't think you can get the V8 anymore. The Tacoma historically has been the V6, so it's not a huge truck. But to have that option still on the market, and Toyota internally developing the stick shift for the Supra when the engine came from BMW. In North America, BMW didn't have a stick shift for that engine drivetrain, or the mating between the engine transmission. This might be the opposite of a business blunder of the day. This is the business bliss. It's great business news. And Toyota continues to knock it out of the park, and with their internal combustion engines lasting about 1 million miles if you treat them right, They continue to be the best return on investment since, I'm trying to think of anything that's better, maybe a Glock. I'm trying to think of things nowadays that you could buy that never break. Maybe a Benchmade knife too. Nevertheless, cheers to Toyota for helping out the automotive community, the enthusiasts who continue to appreciate that third pedal and really enjoy the experience of driving. Now, going on to the culture part of the podcast, one of the most popular topics that kind of like you can't beat a dead horse, some might say, although in this case, it's quite a large, inept Clydesdale. Now, Bud Light sellers are refusing to buy more inventory. So think of bars, grocery stores, many of the places that consumers or end users go to purchase the product. They see the writing on the walls. In this case, it's just right bold font in front of their faces of the sales figures continuing to plummet beyond all belief. So venues are losing millions of dollars. You have distributors losing millions of dollars. Think of any ballpark, football stadium, baseball stadium. One of the biggest profit drivers for those entities are alcoholic sales. In terms of the profit margins, the amount of profit per ounce is astronomical, and the container that you get is like a 3-cent plastic cup. So it's brilliantly profitable. Consumers usually enjoy it. Unfortunately, the downside of those venues is a lot of them have exclusivity contracts. I remember when I went to college, I first started to notice more and more things about those business world in that case. And the stadium that we go to, you can only ever get one soda. That's why if you go to McDonald's, you only get Coca-Cola products. You're not going to see a Pepsi because they're major competitors. Now, these stadiums, if they only have one option and people are still refusing to buy it, that's even worse news. Then you have the distributors who, Lord knows, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they didn't have the business blunder that Bud Light did with their endorsement, but they represent the brand and the product, and in some cases even wear Bud Light uniforms. You see this with Frito-Lay, although those are direct employees when they go to stores like Walmart where you have those employees on the shelves. Similarly, you'll have Anheuser-Busch employees and distributors who are extended members of their team, some might say, but they're representing the brand. They're not controlling the marketing. They didn't make the shots, but they're still getting stuck in between, and I'm guessing most of them are going to pivot their brands or their distribution channels to perhaps more profitable and more intelligent beer companies that do not play in politics. Now, interestingly enough, you continue to see the direct inverse of sales loss and gain. So Bud Light, their off-prem sales dropped through April 22nd. They were down 26.1%. Now, contrast that, Coors Light was up 13.3%, and Miller Lite was up 13.6%. So not only are people switching brands, but they're actually drinking more of those brands, astonishingly enough. And it was all because of a gal in marketing who thought it'd be a brilliant idea to alienate 90% or whatever percent of their consumer base was to try to go after a new audience, which I have yet, let me know in the comments, I've yet to read a single report of increased sales, even in San Francisco or any other area politically that would traditionally support this, probably because they drink other things already. Again, show me a single sales chart of an increase for Bud Light and I'll be astonished. Now, contrast that with more fun culture news. You have Yuengling winning the brewing war, or perhaps the business blunder war, but can't think of a better metaphor, dropping the ball, the horse falling down. Nevertheless, so Yuengling's the oldest brewery in America. They were established in 1829 as Eagle Brewery, so it's about 191 years old, and they just went viral marketing-wise, and their sales will subsequently go up as well. Now, they claim to be the largest craft brewer. They're headquartered over in Pennsylvania, still family-owned, which is astonishing. Like many family-owned businesses, you'll have the son buy it from the father or what have you like that. So some might say, it's sold down from parent. So it's great to see that it's still family-owned after all these years. It's very rare in business. It's sad. I just finished reading, what was Bruce's book called? The Discount Tire Gentleman. So his book was called 6 Tires, No Plan. And it was a little sad to read that book because it's all about him founding the company years ago over in Michigan. And since then, unfortunately, he has passed, but it's a spoiler alert, but Discount Tire is no longer family owned. They still provide an exceptional service, so part of his dream is still alive, but you always kind of wonder, could it be better? Has quality gone down a little bit? But nevertheless, for Yuengling to be in business for so long, it's an amazing achievement. And they went viral on social media for having 3 simple words printed on their box of beer. Well, box holding beer cans. You know what they are. But just 3 words. Let's go USA. Those 3 simple yet brilliant words caused them to just immediately go viral, as people actually believe that brand. I mean, you have the contrast of Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. They released all these cliche ads where they're praising America. They even mentioned 9/11, perhaps one of its most rudimentary marketing techniques. So it's like they brushed off an old book of how do we get out of trouble and just copy-paste patriotic advertisement. Or maybe they used ChatGPT and just said, Patriot advertising beer. It'd be about as original or maybe actually more effective than what they did. But Yuengling, they don't really talk about their politics too much. I believe Trump endorsed them a couple years back, and they have donated to the Republican Party, but the brand doesn't go out there with overtly political ads, as far as I can tell, and they're going to have some long-term success, partially because they're staying out of mainstream politics. They're not talking about certain initiatives, bills, like Disney is. So they're definitely doing something good, and culturally, there's been a resurgence of beer folks that are starting to chew. It's become a very politically divisive thing, and for once, it's actually having some teeth, so to say, in terms of boycott. It's becoming more and more effective and hurting Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch, the parent company, more and more and more, and including InBev with all the publicly traded stocks. But it's interesting to see culturally we're having a resurgence of more people talking about craft breweries, small mom and pop shops. I think it'd be great if more and more beer drinkers supported local breweries. There's a lot of great stuff. I know Texas is famous for Shiner Bock over in Shiner, Texas. Still independently, I believe still family owned. So in the comments, you feel free to correct me. But it's interesting to see. Now, interesting cultural news, going back to the Bud Light Blunder, which that almost sounds like a good t-shirt design, some might say. Now, Costco, one of the most successful stores in history in terms of you buy big quantities for a great price per unit. Even they can't sell Bud Light. And I'm at this price point, I'm guessing it's at a loss. Now, there's a single Costco location in particular that has a 36-pack of Bud Light for $14.91. Now, translated that with the bill basic math before the government steals, taxes with inflation. That's about, or not inflation, that's another thing they did, but with sales tax. But that comes out to about 41 cents a unit, which is unprecedentedly cheap. Even there's a stat about 20 years ago, the average price for a 6-pack, that got the cost down to about $1.13 per can. That's not taking inflation into account. And granted, you do get more of an economies of scale where 36-pack is a little bit more economical than a 12-pack, or 6-pack, but it's astonishing. Even at that dirt cheap price, and I almost suspect it's getting close to the expiration date, so they either have to sell it or alternatively, they have to return it to the distribution chain in the parent company because you can't have bad products on the shelves. Though many would argue that the product is already bad once the minute it hits the shelf due to the quality. Some might say. But even Costco can't push that product. And historically speaking, Costco, Walmart, Sam's Club, they are the kings of pushing products. They are volume sales. Their whole business model, like McDonald's, they don't make a big profit on each thing sold, but if you make a little bit of a profit over thousands of things that you sell or big quantities, that's how you can build a big business. And that's how they've been successful throughout decades. And if even Costco cannot push Bud Light, that surely is yet another sign that it is a business blunder and not at all fiscally intelligent for them to do that marketing campaign. Can they pull out this nose dive? That is a big speculation, and time shall tell if they can really turn it around. Now, going over to the politics part of the podcast, which is especially interesting because this is going to plug in right into the automotive community. You have US government officials who are unaware where EV components come from, which I'm not too surprised given the intellect of most politicians. There are a handful that I do respect due to their stance on things, as well as they can actually have an intellectual dialogue. But to not understand, again, I've been saying this for years, EVs are an interesting tool. Again, I don't think you should be forced to have 100% adoption. but it is a trade-off. It's not a full fix-all solution. You have to wonder, where do these materials come from for the vehicle, as well as how do you charge it when you have states like California with rolling blackouts, when they actually announce you do not charge your car today because we have to black out the whole neighborhood because they don't have the infrastructure to support their current needs, yet alone future needs if you have mass adaptation of EVs. So I always tell people EVs are a fascinating technology, and the battery's getting better and better and better. But again, you cannot have an overnight adaptation, and there's still debate on the long-term effects for the planet in terms of the chemicals needed to get the lithium out of the ground and to actually process the raw materials to get the precious metals. That's a complex thing you need to handle, as well as it's not good for the actual planet. And you also have how do you charge it. You also have, so it's much like many things. It's much more complex, but to not know anything at all is pathetic, but not too astonishing. So this is actually a little clip over on Capitol Hill where they're having a little quick discussion, and this is with Biden's interior chief. So that's it was such a fancy, outlandish, bombastic name. You would think you have some muscle or intelligence behind that title. Actually, no, you wouldn't, but they should maybe.
Subject of these sweeping mandates related to electric vehicles that the Biden administration has imposed, including now for our military. The metals needed to make the lithium-ion batteries in those vehicles are, of course...
That's not a fascinating thing. You actually have someone with the intellect to get elected, which doesn't take much these days, but there's an elected official in the U.S. government saying the U.S. military should be 100% EV by, I believe, 2030, she said, which is the dumbest idea on the planet, or at least top 10, considering where... If you know anything about the military, if you watch even a movie about the military, that's never going to... You're not going to have a Tesla charger over in the countries we go visit. It's the best, most efficient way for fuel, fuel as a category, is gasoline, rocket fuel, diesel. Transporting that liquid is extremely efficient in terms of you put it right into the vehicle and it works. There's a reason every military vehicle uses fossil fuels. You don't have solar panels on a tank. Those things weigh more pounds than you could possibly fathom. The batteries would drain in an instant. Granted, you have DARPA, which is a special division of the government dedicated to see things 50 years in the future, or more, I believe, but unless they have some secret sauce we don't know about yet, this is a completely idiotic idea. Nevertheless, I digress for now.
Of course, lithium, nickel, graphite, and cobalt. Now, can you tell me what nation is the largest producer of refined lithium in the world?
It's not us.
No, I can't.
It's China. Can you tell me which nation is the largest producer of refined cobalt in the world?
No, Senator.
It's China. Do you know what nation is the largest exporter of natural graphite to the United States globally?
No, Senator.
It's China.
Okay.
So in all of these instances, these mandates, your decision to trade off our energy security in favor of a radical climate change agenda, is making us more and more dependent on China. And at the same time, you are denying mining, blocking permits for mines in this country that would allow us to develop nickel and copper and cobalt. Why? Why block the development of these resources in our own nation in favor of making us dependent on China?
Senator, are you referring to the boundary waters?
I'm referring to the Twin Metals mine in Minnesota. I think that Senator Barroso was just asking about it.
Yes, near the boundary waters, which is an iconic place and, of course, a very valuable ecological system to many plants, animals, species.
So, it's interesting. You can debate the pros and cons of a specific mine, but to have such a blanket statement on, I don't know who produces the most of the thing we need the most to make the thing you want to put. They want to push EVs, and they don't know how to make the damn things. That'd be like the CEO. I can't think of an audastic or a more audastic example than this. And China also, as soon as the U.S. left Afghanistan, they were the first ones right back in the country making business deals for the precious materials in the country. which are quite diverse, it's one of those things where I believe it's lithium. There are a couple of precious metals in Afghanistan which are going to help fuel the EV trend that China's going to capitalize on. But that's astonishing. Like, they don't know, like, they're passing laws that are de facto banning the gas engines because they're passing laws on tailpipe emissions. Now, a business or automotive company needs to meet tailpipe emission standards and averages and fleet averages. The fleet average is the average of all the vehicles you produce. And if you keep raising how much that tailpipe emission standards, meaning you can only produce less, the only current conceivable way of the technology we could develop today to hit that is with an EV vehicle. So they're pushing that technology to be adopted. Consumers be damned, free market be damned, but they don't even know the long-term effect. Again, the ripple effect or the domino effect. Think of the big picture. Many people don't, but you're going to be directly financing and helping the country that you are a competitor with, both many would argue ideologically, as well as economically. And it is so audacious that, I don't know where that comes from. Now, that is one of the things that the United States used to be great at. In 2019, for the first time, I think 50 years plus, they were energy independent. Again, thanks to technology. One of the biggest technological breakthroughs in the oil industry in the past couple decades was fracking. And that allowed us, we actually exported more than we were net positive in terms of energy consumption. We actually made more than we needed, and we were exporting. And as the technology got more and more advanced and safer, the side effects of the actual fracking process become safer and safer, and the negative aspects decrease more and more. I'm not saying there were not any negative aspects to it, especially in the beginning, but again, it got better over time. And it's just astonishing that now, again, we're dependent globally on other countries that usually we're at war with for oil, where we could just be using the stuff right here. Or even more absurdly, supporting countries like Venezuela, which are morally vacuous, corrupt, but at the same time, that's the ideology many people want to import. Interestingly enough, if you talk to anyone who's escaped communism, they sure as hell never want to go back, which is why many of my family has never left. Now, other interesting political news, you have Tucker Carlson, and this is interesting. You have a company called Media Matters, which is a nonprofit, which is funded by a lot of folks, including George Soros, and someone at Fox having the moral aptitude or having the moral compass due south, or having no moral compass at all. They're recording all these, and now they're leaking them. So this is when Tucker Carlson was not on cam. He was in the studio, but he didn't think the cameras were rolling. And funny enough, they released this thinking it was going to make Tucker Carlson look bad. Ironically, it made more people like him or respect him. Time shall tell. Let me know what you think. So this was released a couple hours ago.
You'll watch anyway.
Let me crank that volume up for us really quick. So this is him in the studio.
You'll watch anyway. We're gonna because I'm like I don't want to be I don't want to be a slave to Fox Nation, which I don't think that people watch anyway. We're gonna because I'm like a representative of the American media now. Speaking to an exile in Romania and welcoming him back into the Brotherhood of Journalists.
Yeah, it would help us out if you wore a sweater though, because we asked him not to wear a suit. Like, he was panicking about it, so you don't have to. Tucker's gonna be looking casual. That's just how our show looks.
Pause. Sweater. Is this guy Mr. Rogers? Who wears a sweat? No. If anything, the only thing a man is allowed to wear is a turtleneck, and even then, it has to be specifically a tactical turtleneck in black, of course.
Is that okay?
I mean, this is airing on the nighttime show, and I want it to look official. I don't want it to be like bro talk. And I, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the majority of it, like if we go like 45 minutes, it's going to be for Fox Nation.
But nobody's going to watch it on Fox Nation. Nobody watches Fox Nation because the site sucks. So I'd really like to just dump the whole thing on YouTube. But anyway, that's just my view. I'm just frustrated with it's hard to use that site. I don't know why they're not fixing it. It's driving me insane. And they're like making like Lifetime movies, but they don't work on the infrastructure of the site. Like, what? It's crazy, and it drives me crazy because it's like we're doing all this extra work and no one can find it. It's unbelievable, actually. I don't know who runs that site.
We're going to play a sizable chunk on the show tomorrow night. That's the plan. And then what it's going to do is drive a lot of people to watch this on Fox Nation. It's going to be a great help to what we're doing over there on TV today.
I know, but we're doing our part. We're like working like animals to produce all this content, and the people in charge of it, whoever that guy's, whatever his name is, like they're ignoring the fact that the site doesn't work. And I think it's like a betrayal of our efforts. That's how I feel. So of course I resent it.
So, hilariously, Media Matters thought this was going to make Tucker Carlson look terrible, and people were going to be aghast. Aghast that he likes to look professional, and he wants to get his message out there. Makes me think I should maybe put on a tie one of these days. But nevertheless, it's one of those situations where he's right. Fox Nation's rudimentary at best, and nobody uses it. The only reason people paid for that Fox online video access thing was because Tucker Carlson has long format interviews on it. That's the only reason people use the damn thing. And now that Fox is brilliant enough to fire him, or let him go, whatever term you want it to use, no one's going to pay for that subscription service. I mean, he's right. Right now, YouTube is the best, most efficient platform as long as you're not far right. Then of course, they'll mute you or they'll censor you, so you're either off the platform or no one finds it. But for the average consumer and the average producer of content, the most efficient way to get your message out there is YouTube. It has the largest fan base, the largest user base globally, and most importantly, it's stable in terms of the infrastructure. Google has more money than God. They print money basically with their ad revenue. Now, they lost money for years building the infrastructure behind YouTube with countless server farms, data centers being a building dedicated just for having servers, which are basically computers and servers, storage, networking. They have all that. They've spent unprecedented amount of fiscal investment as well as expertise building it so that a YouTube video can be uploaded in minutes and it can be seen around the world, and there might be 1 or 2 outages a year, maybe. It is unprecedentedly reliable, and you have the audience. Rumble is going through an issue right now where they're growing very quickly. They are the best alternative to YouTube right now, but part of the growing pains is building out that infrastructure to handle the volume of users. If too many users go to Rumble right now, the site crashes. Because you have to have the back-end logistics, the piping, rudimentarily speaking, think of it as a house. You have to have the right pipes and the right receptacles for the pipes to go to for the whole thing to actually work. And Fox is not an IT company. They're a dying media company. They sold off Fox Studios, which made the movies, which many people would only know really for the X-Men since they bought that property years ago, I believe. Then they licensed it to Sony for a little bit. So they sold off that division a little while back. And I don't see that Tucker just wanted to get his message out there, and he's just, as a youth might say, keeping it real with this person. If anything, ironically enough, this is just going to make, I think, more people like him, because it shows how authentic he is. He wants to get his unique message out there, and he wants it to be on a platform that's reliable and people also use. And again, Fox is a very late-term adapter to the internet in terms of they were very reluctant to put anything on YouTube for quite some time. And they still don't have a YouTube first initiative because they make their cash and a lot of their money from cable network. So I understand, but they also don't want to become Kodak in terms of Kodak used to dominate the industry. The man who invented it was a genius. He was basically the person who developed the first affordable camera. They used to be the size of a Volkswagen, well, maybe not that big, but expensive, cumbersome, and he designed one that was economic, lightweight, and compact. Revolutionary idea. Now, they quickly built Kodak, Fundamental Business Facts, so that they were a behemoth. They have more patents than anyone when it came to the film technology, and at certain points, they would develop everything internally. So they sold the film, they would develop it. And they had a lot of proprietary technology in there. Now, one of the engineers at Kodak invented the digital camera. They patented it, they invented it. And the executives at Kodak realized, if we invent this digital camera, we mass produce it right now, the thing that makes us the most profit, the film, will completely just vanish. So they decided to shelve it. Until years later, they started to have mass market adoption, and it quickly decimated the whole industry. And it wouldn't have changed. They still have a business or a commercial division for large format companies need really big, high professional printings done. But if they were ahead of the curve and they actually invested in a digital camera, they could have, many speculate, they could have speculated and put in that technology, being an industry leader there, which did diminish partially because of the smartphone, but they could have also maybe adapted to the smartphone. There's a lot of what ifs, but the moral of the story is don't sit on your laurels, as some might say, and you have to constantly adapt and also just constantly innovate. Take the risk, because if you are stagnant, most times you're going to go out of business. It's just the nature of the beast. You have to always be improving your quality and coming out with new products, new ideas. Needless to say, wherever Tucker Carlson goes, he's going to be successful. It is interestingly, everyone's speculating that people actually want to hear from Tucker Carlson, and the big question is, what news agency is he going to go to, or will he develop his own thing? Now, it's a hilarious, interesting contrast to Don Lemon, where a lot of people are speculating maybe he might teach at a university with Brian Stelter. Like, again, I don't think it's launched yet, but it would be a hilariously ironic and interesting. Granted, he's a millionaire. He'll never have to worry about money again. But if someone were to make a Kickstarter or Jumpstart, like, to try to help Don Lemon out and call it Lemonade, that'd be too funny to do. Someone should definitely don't do that. I don't recommend that at all. Nevertheless, now going on to the business blunder of the day, and it's a sad one. Tuesday Morning is now going bankrupt, now for good. So it's been a couple times. Some say 3 times the charm. In this case, maybe 3 nails in the coffin, they're dead. Now, they actually first declared bankruptcy back in 2020. So that was the first time, and it was Chapter 11 restructuring. And they did a lot of leadership changes. They brought in the CEO from Bloomington's, the coat factory. And they did bring a lot of top talent in who historically had a great track record of turning companies around. So there's a lot of folks thinking that things are going the right way, and there's a lot of good future for them. But the issue is kind of like Pier 1. When you ask your friends, when's the last time you shopped there? And anecdotally speaking, you might not have millions of friends, but from anecdotal experience, I never had a single person who had gone there in the past 5 years. It just continued to get worse and worse for them. And then in February 2023, so even a couple months ago, they filed for Chapter 11 again. So that was the second time in 3 years. And they're going to announce, we're going to close more stores, but we're going to somehow become more profitable. And unfortunately, they just couldn't do it. So there's a myriad of reasons why they went bankrupt and they'll no longer be with us. But just as a sad business blunder of the day, a lot of good people are going to be out of work. And this is coming off of another retail bankruptcy. Bed Bath Beyond, one of the most iconic ones, they're also declaring bankruptcy, this time for good. So it is sad news, but hopefully all those good people will be able to find jobs in other employment, as you have the ever evolving economy with more jobs coming up in different industries, different segments, and different retailers, as some flourish and some bite the dust, unfortunately. And ADHD question, or comment rather, if anyone has a Tuesday Morning sign somehow, let me know and I'll buy it off you so I can put on the good old historic business blunders behind me, which are all the vintage business signs we have if you're just listening on the Audible. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the podcast today. Cannot thank you enough. Every time you like and subscribe, comment, it helps the channel grow and develop, and it also helps me improve. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone to stay safe and fight the good fight.